It's time for another Dirt Daily, and today I am going to rebuild this winch. But first, this video is brought to you by Warn and the Warn family of businesses. Warn, as you probably know, makes winches. But within the Warn family, they also make bumpers at Fab 4s, they make suspensions at Fab Tech, and they make recovery gear at Factor 55. And I've been doing a video every month with our friends at Warn. I actually got to go to the Warn factory, and I saw one of these iconic 8274 winches get built, but on this episode, I am going to rebuild this winch that I have had for a while. Not necessarily rebuild completely, but I'm gonna make it work again. I'm gonna put a new motor on it, I'm gonna put a new rope on it, and I'm gonna tell you a little bit about why I love this winch and what I think could be even better if you have one. All right, let's get to work. This truck is a 1967 GMC, and I bought this truck because my dad has the identical truck back in Pennsylvania, and his is kind of rusting away. And I thought about getting his and restoring it, but I have 3 older brothers, and I was like, well, maybe one of those guys will want to restore that one. And then I found this one right down the road. It's a 2-wheel drive, 67. Originally had the V6 engine in it, now it has a small block Chevy in it. And it was the same color, the same patina, the same interior color. It was very similar. My dad's is a manual, this one's an automatic, but I just was like, I gotta get it. And then the first thing I did was I put a winch bumper on it. This is from a company called Engineered Vintage, and I dropped this 8274 winch in it. You may be asking, why does a 2-wheel drive truck need a winch and a winch bumper? Well, I don't know. I just like winches, and I like putting them on everything because they're super handy. Maybe someday this truck will get converted to 4-wheel drive. Or maybe someday I'll be driving this truck and the postman will drive off into a ditch and I'll be like, don't worry, I got a winch, and I can pull him out of the ditch. Whatever the reason is, I did, and I put this winch on here. And I've had this winch for about 1.5 years. This winch came in a deal when I bought a Jeep. And in fact, it is a Jeep branded 8274, which is probably blasphemy that I put it on a GMC, but whatever. I like it, it's cool, it's old, it works, but it's a little bit finicky. The controller box is busted. It uses a very specific old controller, which I somehow have misplaced. The cable on it is big and heavy. I'd like to improve that and change it over to rope, and basically I want to give it a little spruce up. It's not going to get a full rebuild, but I'm going to change the oil in it, I'm going to change the motor that's on it, and I'm going to change the rope that's on it, or make it rope instead of steel cable. And then hopefully I can put it back together. The 8274 is, well, the 8274 is the part number for this winch, but it's also, it stands for something. 8 for 8,000 pound capacity, 2 for multi-directional motor, which means it can winch in or winch out under power. And 74 was the year that this winch came out. Before that, there were some prior styles. There was an 8000. In fact, that's on that red Jeep over there. And then there was the Bellevue winch. And there's probably some other models mixed in there as well, but those are the main ones that most people know about. I love these winches. They're strong, but I do think there's a few places where you could improve on this winch. They're not bad, but they're just things that I think would make it a little bit better or a little bit more interesting, because this winch has been around since '74, and a lot of cool stuff came out in the '70s. But I think that you could improve this a little bit. Number one, these winches are really fast, and however, in racing applications, people want even more speed. So like if you're King of the Hammers racing, you get hung up on a rock, you want to winch off of it and get back in the race as fast as possible. So there are companies that offer faster motors, that offer multiple motors, and I've even heard rumor that Warn is talking about making like a race spec 8274, or some sort of racing application winch, which I think is cool. I think for most people, they don't need a faster winch. Like these winches are so fast as it is. You can winch in, you can winch out safely. You get much more speed, and people start getting their fingers drug into winches because they're not paying attention. So does it need to be faster? I guess for a racing application, I can see that. For most people, probably not. What I do think they should offer on an 8274 is two things. One, these winches are mounted on the front face, and most of the bumpers that are available for winches have the mounting holes on the bottom. So I think it would be cool to have an 8274 winch that could be mounted either front face or bottom. I have found there's a guy on Facebook, or not Facebook, on eBay that offers an adapter plate, so it can bolt to the front of the winch like it is now, and it has an adapter that wraps around and you can bolt it straight down. And I'm sure that like converting the 8274 to a bottom mount would add machine costs or production costs that they're probably not interested in doing. These things are made by hand up in Oregon. They're pretty classic. They've been around for a long time. The other thing that I think an 8274 could use is a light, like either a work light or a floodlight. It doesn't need to be like a big off-road light, but there's kind of this space right here at the end of the motor, behind the control box, and there's all this power that's already coming to the winch because it's bolted, it's wired directly to your battery. Like, what if there was a floodlight that you could kind of either turn it down and you could see how much rope was going onto your winch drum, or you could roll it forward and actually use it as a floodlight on the front of your 4x4. It seems like a great idea and a simple idea. There's probably more to it that I'm not thinking about because there always is. But those are a few little upgrades that I think would be great for an 8274. Let's get this thing out of here and see if we can get a new motor on it. 8274s are also kind of heavy. These are new parts for the 8274. First, I have a winch rope instead of steel cable. Do I prefer rope over steel cable? I used to not think it really made much difference, but now I feel like winch rope is probably the way to go. It's lighter, there's less weight over your front axle, less weight on your suspension. It's easier to handle. It's usually like lighter, like say you're slid off a road into a ditch and you need to get up to a tree up on a hillside. It's easier to carry rope up there than it is to drag steel cable. Or if somebody hikes up there and you want to like throw it up to them, it's usually easier with rope. Yeah, I think rope is the way to go. I used to not really care, but now I'm like, yeah, I think it just makes more sense. Would rope last as long as steel cable? I mean, I've had winch ropes that I've been using probably way longer than the promoted lifetime of winch ropes. Do UV rays affect winch ropes? Probably, but like rust can affect a steel line. And also, like if you have a steel winch line and it gets a kink in it and you get those little steel burrs, you can stab yourself in the hands, which like you should always be wearing gloves, but still it doesn't always happen. I think that winch rope is probably just easier and cleaner and lighter and better in all aspects. So I'm gonna go with winch rope. Now, I guess the only place that I could see steel being kind of better is that it's kind of looks period correct if you're building an old Jeep or you're building a 67 GMC. I don't really care. I'm going to just go with what I think works. I also like hooks. I prefer a hook over a thimble or a closed winching system, as they're often called. And I will get in arguments with this over, especially with my buddies at Factor 55, because they are known for their thimbles. They do have their ultra hook now, but what I like about a hook over a thimble is in a worst case scenario, you're in a snowstorm, you're stuck, you have somebody with you that's having a medical emergency, you have to get out of there as fast as possible. If you have a thimble, you need a shackle of some sort. You need like either steel shackle or soft shackle, and you probably need some sort of strap to go like around a tree. What if you lose those? What if you've been winching all day, the shackle fell off in the mud, the tree saver it fell out of the back of your rig? All you have is the rope with the hook on the end. You can loop it around a tree, hook it back onto itself, winch yourself out. You're not supposed to do that. It's bad to do because it can damage the tree. But if it's life or death, I would do that, and I can do that with a hook. With a thimble, you would have to like tie a knot, and then I would be concerned that it would not come loose. You'd have to literally cut your winch line, and then you are in a big mess. So my preference, hooks. Other people, thimbles, that's fine, whatever you're into, as long as you have some sort of strong safety recovery gear. Warn makes great stuff. Factor 55, also great stuff. So let's set that aside, because that will be the last thing we're doing. I have a new winch controller and winch control box, solenoid box. I like just the basic ones. You push up for winch out, push down for winch in. Warn does offer some winches that you can control with your phone, which is great technology if that's what you're into. I like these. I think they're strong, they're simple. Some people feel like you should have a winch controller on your dash, whatever you're into. Like for me, having a winch controller that plugs in and then you run the line back to the driver, or somebody outside the vehicle can run the winch, however you prefer to do it, that's my preference. So do with it as you see fit. So we have a new winch controller. And this should go somewhere super handy. Glove box, door panel, somewhere that you can get to it quickly. Not buried in your recovery bag toolbox underneath the spare tire, underneath the fridge, in the back of the rig. Because when you're upside down and your buddy's like, hey, throw me your winch controller, I'll help you get out. And you're like, yeah, I gotta unpack it from the rear. No. This thing should be super handy. Center console, even like the seat cover that has the little pocket on the front, stuff it right there. This should be within reach of driver, if not already hooked up and strapped up cleanly so that somebody, you or whoever, can get to it. So I don't know where the one is that goes to this box, because I didn't follow those rules and put it somewhere handy. I lost it. And then a new control box. This will go on the new motor. And right here, the new motor. So this is the new winch motor. One thing that's different about this motor compared to the old motor is that this one has a dedicated ground that runs to the battery, where the old one only has a power cable. And I think the power cable is in the control box. So this one will actually ground out the motor, where before the whole winch was just grounding out through the mounts, which is not ideal, because if there's you want to have positive ground from the motor to the battery, and the same as you want your power line to run from the control box to the battery. All right, let's take this thing apart. There is the motor right here. This is the solenoid pack, the control box. This has 3 wires that run down to the motor. Usually these boots are pretty hard to wrestle off. It turns out the ones on this winch are literally falling apart as I remove them. So you're going to disconnect these 3 wires. There's also a little ground wire that runs to the motor. We're going to disconnect that. And then we will undo the 2 hose clamps that hold the solenoid pack to the motor itself. These two screws on the back of the motor here actually run all the way through the motor and help hold it, attach it to the housing of the winch. So you're going to want to get those loose, and there is the chance that they are frozen solid or rusted solid. So I'm going to grab, because these are screws and not a hex style, I'm going to grab a little set of vice grips here. All of these will be replaced with the new motor. There we go. Get a little bit more leverage on it. And you can back these out. You'll see here in a second when I pull this out. See how long that is? That runs all the way through there. And then down here on the bottom are the hose clamps. We're going to remove those, and then we can get the solenoid pack off the old motor. There we go. I don't remember if I have to remove the clutch engagement lever to get the motor off or not. So I'm going to start by removing the other screw here and see if this all comes off. I may have to open up this side and get the clutch engagement lever off in order to get the whole motor off. There we go. Back this out. See if this breaks loose. Ah, yes, it does not want to come out. Oh, there it does come out. Perfect. So that is the old motor. You can see how there's a key way in the shaft, and that splines into the gear that's inside on the clutch. Now, this part, we are not going to be reusing any of this. There is also a gasket. Here you can see the new gasket that goes around here. So we will find that gasket on the side here and see if we can pry that off. So now I'm going to move on to this side, and I'm going to remove this clutch engagement lever because we are going to be putting a different upper gear inside there. Take this little baby hammer and this little baby screwdriver and see if I can get, there we go. And there is our clutch. So when I pulled the clutch out and when I pulled the motor out, there's a gear that is driven by the motor that turns the other gears inside here. And that gear fell down inside the body of the winch. So I think I can recover it with this magnet. There it is. So this is the gear that has a so this is our old pinion drive gear and this is our new pinion drive gear. The old one, as you can see, has a keyway inside of it. And the new one is splined, and the splines from the new one will slide over the shaft. But they are identical in size and length. And so this is our new gear that we're going to have splining onto the shaft of the motor. this point, I don't necessarily have to take the top half of the winch off, but looking down inside here, it's pretty crusty. I can turn the gears. They don't look rusty, but there's definitely some sludge in here, and I almost wonder if it's missing any sort of oil in there at all. So I'm gonna lay it over and see if oil pools in the bottom of this thing, or if it's been running dry for a while. There's definitely some oil in this, but not very much, and it looks filthy, like it's contaminated with water. You can kind of see how there's different colors inside of it. So I think it's going to be best to drain all of the oil out of this and possibly remove the top half of the winch so that we can kind of clean everything out and then put fresh oil in there. I was hoping to get away with not removing the top half of the winch body, but I think I'm going to have to. There's basically just 3 bolts, one on the inside here, 2 on the outside, and this should lift up and off, and then I can see how dirty and nasty it is inside there and clean it out. There we go. How's that look? I got the top off. It doesn't look terrible down in there. Some of the gears have a little bit of surface rust on them, but nothing looks really damaged. It's just a little bit concerning that there was like 0 oil down inside this thing when I opened it up. And it is kind of gross. There's a lot of scunge on the sides. So I think I will spray it out, clean it out, flush it out, and then make sure I put more fresh oil in it before it goes back together. I will need to put a little bit of silicone right around this seal, but it does have like a positive and a negative, like male and female design, so that it kind of keys into itself and helps seal it up. So we'll clean all that seal surface off. We'll kind of flush out all the dirt and junk, and we'll make sure it's refilled with fresh oil. I ran that seal surface on a wire brush and got it nice and clean. Now I'm gonna just kind of wipe out all of this garbage that's down in here. There is a serial number on this, 71193, and I'm sure there's a way to look that serial number up and figure out what year this winch was built, and that would give us some idea of how long it's been used. There are certified Warn rebuild shops, so if you have an old 8274, there's shops across the country that can rebuild stuff like this. Not every shop is certified to do this, though they are a pretty simple winch. I know that there's certain shops that can get their hands on all the rebuild parts and everything. Overall, this one's not too bad. It's got a little crust inside there, but nothing looks broken. There's no teeth missing, and other than some grime, which is expected with time, kind of looks pretty good. I cleaned the top half of the winch really good. The seal surface is nice and clean. Kind of flushed it out with some brake clean. Then I scrubbed the inside of the bottom and I filled it up with some automatic transmission fluid. I'm just letting it kind of soak in there, and I've been spinning it around so the gears get covered. Then I kind of turn it around and kind of scrub all the gears with a Scotch-Brite or a wire brush, looking for any imperfections, but everything looks pretty good. So I'm gonna let that soak for a minute, and then we'll drain that out, hose all that out with brake clean, and then we are ready to reassemble. I flushed out all the ATF and sprayed it out with brake clean and got a rag down in there and wiped it around and tried to get all the scunge out. You should probably take this completely apart if it's really nasty. This one is actually cleaned up pretty easily, so I'm going to start reassembly. When I was at Warn, they used Shell air tool oil or Shell tool oil. I have some motor oil. This is 10W30, and they said to use 200 milliliters, and this actually has a little marking on the side. 200 milliliters is somewhere between 3/4 and a cup, so that's probably about enough. Basically, the oil will sit down at the bottom of the gears and move up through the gears as everything turns. Let me see if I can make this spin. Come on. There we go. As I turn this, the gears start bringing the oil up onto the gears. Everything looks good. So I'm gonna let that sit, and now we will reassemble the top. The top needs to have the motor installed on this side and the clutch. I'm calling it the clutch. It's actually the engagement for the drive or free spool. So I don't know that clutch is the proper term for it, but that's what I'm calling it. And this is basically gonna sit on there like that, and then it will slide in and out. When you pull it out, that's when your winch is in free spool. When you push it in, that's where this gear will engage with it'll engage the motor to the top drive gear, and that will get everything running. So this motor has this plastic piece that holds everything in place. You're gonna wanna remove that. And to remove that, you remove these, you unscrew these two right here. These are the ones that hold the motor to the top of the winch, but you don't want to have everything fall out. So we're going to kind of do this gently, and then this will basically plug into there, and you need it to all kind of go together and not have everything fall apart. Oh, and don't forget your gasket. And the gasket has a hole in the top of it there, and that lines up with a peg on the top of the motor. But first we have to remove that plastic piece. Back out these two screws just a little bit until this plastic piece comes off. Take your washer, that slides down inside there. Take your gasket, that slides on here over this pin. Make sure there's a little grease on the splines of the motor. Not a lot, just enough so that when we put everything together, we don't have to fight it. And then this, we bring up here and we slowly align everything. And then this will lock down into place like that. Perfect. This is our top piece of our winch. We now have the motor on there, and you can see the gear inside there. That's the shaft coming out of the motor. And that is where this part will slide onto that when it's sitting in the shift lever, clutch lever. I don't know what actual term for this is the engage versus free spool lever. And that will go down inside there. So we got to get a little bit of grease on this, and then we can assemble that to the top half of the winch. It's probably more grease than it needs, so that this piece can spin on there freely, and then this will slide onto the splines of the shaft coming off of the motor. Oh, I forgot the silicone. Take this back off. Whoa, whoa! I got to put some silicone on that seal surface so that it seals up where the shift lever goes over. Now we got a little silicone on there. Now we can take this gear, and that slides down on there. And now we can put the screws back in. So you can see down in here, this lever slides that small gear. Oh, let me see if I can do it. So now it's disengaged. So now it's disengaged from the motor. Motor can spin. And then when you want to engage your winch, you push this lever in, and then that is engaged. So the motor is spinning this top gear, and then that top gear spins the next gear. So now we can put silicone on all of this and then reassemble it onto the top of the winch. You don't need a ton of silicone, you just need it to seal up that groove. And mostly that's so that as you're jostling around, the oil doesn't escape. And when you're out four-wheeling in the mud or the rain, the water doesn't get inside. Okay. Now we get our hardware ready so that when we drop this back on here, everything is ready to go back together. We have oil in there. We have the new motor on. I'm going to flip this over, set it on top, and then drop the hardware down in and reassemble everything. Oh, I put it on upside down. I have my clutch crashing into the actual clutch of the winch, so I got to take this off, spin it all over. I was like, why won't it go together? I had the clutch handle coming out the bottom of this instead of the top. All right, that's how you want it. You want this to be at the bottom, not at the top, or at the top, but it's upside down. So this is the top. Up there is the bottom. Okay, now make sure this still slides in and out. Yep, perfect. And now we can finally assemble this. Now we take this and flip it over, and it should go right there. Beautiful. Okay. Next, we'll put the control box on. This is what tells the winch whether it should spool in or spool out. There are 3 wires that go to these 3 terminals up on top. Those are these 3 wires. There's a blue tag, a green tag, and a yellow tag on these wires. And those correlate to the color on the top of each of these studs on the motor. And also there's a number imprinted into the motor, an F1, an F2, and an A. And those are also on these tags. So you really shouldn't be able to screw this up. I'm sure it's possible, but, and then there's also a ground wire, and the ground wire goes to a bolt that screws into the bottom of the motor. And that is also where the ground wire goes. This attaches to the bottom of the motor, and then this runs up to the ground side of your battery. And then there is a red wire that runs to the positive side of your battery. So it's pretty foolproof, but you also want to take your time. Oh, and there are these little booties. These go over the end of the wire and over the terminal to protect everything so that hopefully it doesn't short out when you're out four-wheeling. So the first thing we'll do is we'll slide these onto these wires. They should just go right on. If they fight you a little bit, you can always put a little bit of WD-40 inside there, spray them down a little to help lubricate them up. Get all of these boots on first so that then you have them on before you put this together. Otherwise, you'll be like, oh, I gotta take it all back apart. Put the little boots on. All the wires are connected. These top 3 wires don't have a whole lot of slack in them, so they're kind of hard to get lined up perfectly. But everything's on, the boots are on, the big wire to run to the battery and the ground strap are all attached. The hose clamps are tight. You kind of have to watch where the hose clamp route's underneath because it wants to almost run at the same spot as the stud on the bottom for the ground wire, but everything's attached. It's time to roll the truck back in here and we'll put this back on the bumper. We are mounted. In the free spool mode, I can turn the drum by hand. And then it locks in. Now I'm gonna hook the battery cables right up to the battery. You don't wanna hook these to the frame if possible. You don't want the ground to go to the frame. You want it to go right to the negative side of the battery if possible. So I'm gonna route these through the grill, behind the headlights, and try to get it up to the battery. Battery is hooked up. Let's see if it runs. Moment of truth, fingers crossed. Yeah! Perfect. Now, we have to install the winch line, the winch rope. The way these work is different depending on the winch. This one has a hole in the drum, and I'm going to try and get this rope to go through that hole in the drum. I may even have to come in and like drill it and open it up a little bit. And then once this goes inside the drum, I will attach it, maybe put something on it so it can't pull back out, and then it will get the first spool on here. It doesn't need to be, the part that holds this to the drum should not be supporting the entire weight of the vehicle. It's basically when the winch rope is wrapped around the drum the whole way, that is what is holding the rope to the drum. So all of that friction of the rope all the way around on the drum. And you know that when you are winching out and you get to this red part of the rope, that's where you should stop, because you don't really want this off of the drum. You want the red section, which is the end that goes towards the drum. You want that on the drum because that gives it the most friction and the most strength. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this out and get that first section ready to spool onto the drum. And this will go in the fairlead and then wrap around and go into the drum. So here you can see the hole in the winch drum. I want the end of the winch rope to go through that hole, and then it pokes through on the inside here. There's a cover that goes on the end and covers all that up. But I need to get that winch line through this little tiny hole right here, and then I will put some sort of U-bolt or some sort of clamp on it so that it can't pull back out. Let's start with a zip tie. Put that up through the hole, through the end of the winch rope, back through the hole, and then see if that has enough strength to get that through. I have a feeling I'm going to have to open that hole up a little bit. But maybe if I use a pry bar, I can pry it down through there. Let's try that. No, that just snapped it. All right, I'm going to drill this hole out a little bit. See if I can get the winch line through there. Okay. There. Got it. I got the end of the winch rope through inside the drum. I'm going to use just a normal cable clamp, and I'm really just putting this on here to act as a way to keep it from getting pulled back through. I don't really expect it to ever be at a point where this is up against the inside of the drum. I got the winch rope inside the drum. Now I can this winch is fast. Now all I have to do is spool 150 feet of winch line on here. Like I had said in a prior video, you want to do this under load so that the winch spools, the rope spools on there really tight. I'm not going to do that right now because I'm just getting it on the drum to start, and then we'll put the hook on. I do want to find some gloves. This thing's going to get ripping through my hand. There you have it. I have a new motor, a new controller, new rope. Old 8274 has been given a brand new life. This truck is that much closer to be ready to take out on a little adventure. If you have an 8274, or if you're looking for a winch for your 4x4, don't be scared to track down a used 8274 Warn winch. You can buy a lot of the parts, you can get it rebuilt if you don't want to do the work yourself, and it will probably last you longer than a lot of the cheap imported winches that you can get nowadays. I love these winches. I think they're really cool, and you can rebuild them, and then you can be out four-wheeling and have just about nothing to worry about. That's it for this Dirt Daily. We'll see you guys next time. I gotta find a safe place for this so I don't lose it.